He said the dunes just went away. He said the front stairs were sort of hanging off. And apparently it's yellow winching for a couple of weeks or something like that, loose sand. So he's down there with a trailer and a front end loader. God knows what he'll do.
Okay, we're rolling now.
Okay.
We'll do
2:00, note the presence of quorum. Let's bring this to order. First item of business is consideration and actions of the minutes of the August 31st meeting. I'll entertain a motion anytime.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let me sign this thing now. And this is this nice lady. So don't take it home.
Thank you.
Item 3, citizens to be heard.
Scott, is there anybody online?
There's nobody online.
Okay, I note none in the room and none remotely, so we'll move on to item 4, consideration of possible action concerning the architectural services of John Dykema Architects, remodeling the appraisal district office. You've got a document here, and I admit to send this back. I thought I sent it to Mike, and I always said. Essentially a resolution that I'll let you read it.
It's a draft CAD board resolution. Yeah, what he's got.
If you like it, we'll take the draft off and go.
I don't have milk, is that what we're supposed to read?
Yeah.
Okay, but wouldn't we have
Oh,
to
it's in the
consider
back. I
at
was
least
reading the email.
his proposal as an integral part of this? Well, you've got a draft resolution that says we want to do this, we want to hire them, but shouldn't we consider his proposal as an integral part of this? Or
Well, if you look down at the resolution, what we're saying is, and we can change this or not use it at all, that you choose. We've got a proposal. The last time we met, everybody's memory back, we had sort of a general proposal for some general cost estimates. And Brink had asked them to get something in more detail, and what was in more detail was still fairly sketchy, Jimbo.
Yeah, it was down a couple of levels, but it wasn't down to contract preparation.
And at that time, I think there was consensus that some of us ought to go back to them and let's work out all the details, get it in a contract, and then they bring that back to the board.
having read the last paragraph now, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Since we didn't get this ahead of
And you
time.
didn't have a chance to look at it beforehand, so I understand. I'll forgive you.
Yeah, and you know, in going back a little bit, all we talked about last time was under a chief appraiser report. And now it's on an agenda item to say, hey, listen, can Mike engage into getting them to give us a contract, at which time in the next meeting, very shortly hereafter, it'll again be another 10-minute meeting where you have a week to kind of look at this contract and say yes or no, or whenever we come to that meeting, we get to ask all the questions about those services. I know that my attorney is going to want to look at that contract prior to that board meeting. And if you want to do this in conjunction with the resolution, like Dee said, he got this to me about 5 minutes ago. So, and you're all seeing it for the first time. So we can do this in conjunction at that time, or we can do it now. In looking at that last, in that last paragraph, the board, Chairman McClellan and the board of directors are authorized to negotiate a final contract, which will permit a timely completion. So basically this says, hey, go get the contract. This says to me, go get the contract.
Okay.
And then, you know, at that point, I will present the contract.
There's some question in my mind.
Read the last line,
Well,
final contract for board approval.
Exactly. So this is really good.
It can be argued that we really don't need to be quite this formal about this. There are people looking over people's shoulders these days. So
Really?
You notice that. I said, let's be clear about what we're gonna do. We have been through in a couple of points, one, there's not any numbers in here, I didn't want any numbers in here. Two, we have talked to a number of people, and I want to make that clear. We didn't just pick this guy because he's my brother-in-law or something.
I thought he was your son-in-law. Oh, no, okay.
It's a joke for everybody online.
I really need to quit doing
Yeah,
that. No, make clear that you know, what the background was. You know, that way, if somebody looks at the record, they may find something to argue with, but I think it's gonna be difficult. We'll go, and I said, Brink, myself, because Brink's been involved, and Mike, get with Dykema, and I think Brink and Mike have pretty well defined what they want. And then we've got to get the contract. I looked at the contract several days ago quickly, and I didn't see anything that raised my hackles, but it needs looking at some more. And then as Mike points out, we absolutely have to run it by Jim Evans.
There's the American Disabilities Act, there's all the architecture boilerplate stuff as far as recompense or anything like that. It just all needs to be looked at. And then at which point I'll say, hey, let's have another meeting. I will give you that contract prior to that so you can digest it, and then we can go forward. In the interim, basically, I'm going to be working with, in hopes that that goes through, I'm going to be working with this guy saying, here's where I want this board room, here's where I want this office space.
Yeah.
And he gets to start going through it.
The only thing, and Rick, you hit on this directly in the last meeting, that I don't see, and I think just to mention it so it's covered in the contract. I would hate for you to be in a position to have a subcontractor come to you and say, I need a drawing. In my opinion, that has to be routed through Dykema.
And I thought I read that in the contract.
It is.
Well, okay, then the contract's not here. Because if it is,
I think it was in his cover letter.
okay, that's, if it's there, Rick, I'm fine with that. I just
We've got a
didn't see
copy of
that
it.
in this.
During the construction phase, this is on the second page, Actima Architects will act as the owner's representative, provide administration of the contract between owner and contractor. Architect services would include interpreting contract copies, reviewing contracts and bills, visiting the site, and certifying payments and rejecting non-conforming work. Very top. Top.
I don't have that. That explains why I'm not seeing it. Okay, fine.
Did you get that? Okay, that's another one of those, I'm sorry.
That was the cover letter that John Dyken sent us, these were attached to.
Okay.
Yeah, we know
Okay.
Okay.
And apologies
That's okay.
for me missing it. Yeah, because I normally, again, this is why those things are important and this is good. This is all good.
So I think the important thing is that we've gone kind of several steps, and we're at the point now where we like Dykema. He's got a good reputation. He certainly, based on his experience, knows what he's doing. And we're saying, okay, it looks like this might be a viable person for us to do business with. Let's go ahead and say we're ready to move ahead and finalize a contract to do the work.
Bingo.
Now, when we say, let's go ahead, finalize a contract to do the work, we still got to approve it and sign. Okay. I'm happy with all of it. There's one big caveat from my perspective is I have little idea what the requirements for a quasi or a legal entity of the state needs to do. So Jim Evans is going to make sure that
And Mr. Evans.
is going to have those provisions in there, and we're going to look at some of them and say, what? But at any rate, I feel really comfortable with Dykema. I think the process is open. I think it's important that the board know what's going on and what we're moving to, and this allows that final step to be made to say, okay, here's the contract, here's what we're committing to. If there's any area of concern is too strong a word, but that we need to pay attention to is that it appears to me that it's going to require more attention by us, primarily Mike and his group, in terms of understanding and reviewing what's going to be happening out there. Not from a legal or an ADA standpoint, but from we want this here, that here, and so forth. And we're going to need to check that periodically. Builders are great. They do. I'm sure all of us have had the experience that we want to do ABC. Said, yep, I'm going to do ABC. So, and ABC is yep. And then, 2 weeks later, you say, well, you didn't do ABC. Yes, I did. I did ABC. You follow what I'm saying? So that's why you need that kind of oversight.
Some memories are coming back now.
Yeah, I guess.
Where the builder says, no problem.
Right.
Problem.
Yeah.
We all know that.
Okay, this is saying that we've talked to a bunch of people. Dykem is our starting quarterback. Hope he doesn't break his leg in the second game.
Yeah,
Well, remember, he's not a one-man show.
No, I doubt that's it. Thinking of that, did you enjoy that game this weekend with Arkansas?
Yes. I'm almost ready to get my packed away in the boxes.
I'm gonna get slugged.
I mean, I engaged in a replay like 10 times. In a pro, I've never seen a game replayed as much. Just horrible. If experiencing it once wasn't bad enough.
the meetings that came out of there on Monday morning, I haven't seen it. We messed up. Can we go back?
I think I should.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I
All
just
right.
couldn't resist.
Does this was actually in the information that was presented today. So I can read this into the record, or we can just have it in the, as one of the attachments in this meeting's minutes.
I think you're right to read it into the record now. You're
Yeah.
giving the three of y'all the
Okay,
opportunity to negotiate the contract and then
this
Come
is
back to
the,
the board.
this is the draft ACAD board resolution, as delineated by D. McClellan. Whereas the Aransas County Appraisal District Office Building 601 South Church, Rockport, Texas, was severely damaged by Hurricane Harvey, August 2017, is declared total loss by the insured. After 8 to 9 months operating from temporary quarters, ACAD purchased the Value Bank building at 11 Highway 35 North and occupied the building in mid-2018. The Value Bank building had suffered some roof damage during Harvey and some interior water damage. ACAD had replaced the roof in 2018. I believe that was in 2019, actually, or we started the process in 18, but
We need to change a couple of, I guess.
yeah, and replace the roof in 2018, but I believe the record is 2019. That's a mere formality in this document, though. Has been able to adequately perform its statutory mission for the last roughly 4 years, despite the interior water damage and the fact that the interior of the building was laid out to support a banking operation rather than appraisal district activities. Recently, ACAD had contacted a number of local builders and contractors, interior designers, and architects regarding renovation of ACAD offices to repair the Hurricane Harvey water damage and reconfigure the interior layout to more optimally serve the needs and activities of ACAD. Only one firm, Dykema Architects, Corpus Christi, has responded with preliminary proposal, which appears to meet those objectives. Preliminary estimates from Dykema Services and actual construction costs are within the ACAD's available funds previously set aside by the board resolution from the insurance settlement for and the sale of 601 South Church property. Therefore, be resolved by the ACAD Board of Directors that the board chairman, Chair McClellan, board member Brinkerhoff, and Chief Appraiser Soto are authorized to negotiate a final contract with Dykema Services, which will permit timely completion of the renovation and reconfigure of the interior to meet the ACAD's needs using available funds previously set aside for the purpose and in accordance with Texas government contractor requirements to present the final contract for board approval.
recommend that we remove the draft and adopt that resolution with the historical correction if necessary for the 2018-2019.
Yeah, I don't remember that. We did start in 2010, maybe
Yeah, in 2019.
That's-
Right, that's immaterial.
Not, that's immaterial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's adopted. All right, thank you. And I'm sorry, I don't know what happened.
There was and I apologize as well, when there was a lot of back and forth
Yeah.
between Dykema and Brink, and then Brink and you, maybe
Well, I saw this, you sent it to me,
Yeah.
I thought Mike was copied on it already, so as I remember.
I think
I could have easily missed
I
that.
think what I did, I sent it to Mike after you had looked at it. I want you to look at it, make sure there wasn't any
You're right.
problems that you saw that I might have missed. So anyway, well.
Basically, we're in the mode of, let's have communication with the guy, let's get a contract going, let's start business, let's go.
Yeah, I'm optimistic that it's gonna be good for all of us and moving ahead, but the board needs to look at it and say, yep, this works for us. Go from there.
Sounds great.
Okay, all right, that would move us on to item 5, Chief Appraiser's report.
Since our last meeting was just a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, I have no new supplemental appraisal roll presentation. That'll be at the next meeting, for any substantive changes to the appraisal roll. The financials are essentially the same as what I presented 14 days ago or something like that. And we just talked about the building remodeling update. So that's all that I have.
Good.
Good.
Okay.
Great.
I thought it was
Excellent meeting. Excellent meeting.
Yeah.
Right amount of time.
this place is gonna work, right?
Just
Are we
a
off?
question of curiosity. Does the Texas, is there something that we need to do or could do that would enable us to have the opportunity to have a Zoom meeting? Or is that stricture from Texas law, or I know in a regular corporation, you've got to have the bylaws say it's okay.
Right. In previous discussions with Jim, there was during the COVID pandemic that some of those have expired. You were able to do that.
Okay.
You're no longer able to
Okay.
do that. I think that those timelines have expired.
That's fine.
So,
Look again
okay.
and see if they were reinstated, because I went to a city council meeting 10, 12 days ago, and it
You had
was,
voting members that were Zoom?
no, just audience.
Yeah,
So
audience
You're
can.
talking
I'm
voting.
talking about voting.
Yeah.
So,
Right,
okay,
so we-
bingo,
so we
different
can-
question.
yeah,
All the
yeah.
council was there.
I think I've asked that, well, I'll ask again, but I mean, I think, because that was one of the first things when the pandemic started, like, how's this gonna look with ARB, how's it gonna look with board, I know that there's voting required, I know that there's Open Meetings Act that's, and it was tied to the Open Meetings Act. So yes, I believe that the audience still can. And for ARB meetings, they, for a number of years, they've had telephone and video Zoom conference ability that's promulgated by the Texas Property Tax.
Just for the record, are we off? Or are we still on?
We're still on, nobody, haven't
I know we
adjourned yet.
Adjourn.
Just adjourn.